unlimited drama series.
The cop's flashlight cut through the morning fog like a knife through my last shred of dignity. I squinted from the driver's seat of my rusted Ford pickup, my neck screaming from another night sleeping against the window. The closed for sale sign of my former landscaping business mocked me through the windshield. "Sir, you can't park here overnight," Officer Martinez said, his voice carrying that particular blend of authority and pity that made my teeth clench. "This is private property." I wanted to laugh. Private property. Yeah, I knew all about that. 3 months ago, this had been my property, my business, my life's work. Now it belonged to the bank, courtesy of my loving wife's family and their creative interpretation of loan guarantees. "Just give me a minute," I muttered, running my hands through what was left of my hair. At 47, I looked like I'd been through a wood chipper, which, metaphorically speaking, I had. Martinez stepped back as I climbed out of the truck, my joints protesting every movement. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent 20 years keeping other people's lawns perfect, and now I was living like a vagrant in a parking lot. "You got somewhere to go, Mr. Thompson?" he asked, checking his notepad. "Wife? Family?" The question hit like a punch to the gut. Wife? Yeah, I had one of those. Sarah was probably waking up in our former king-size bed right about now, in the house her daddy bought us, planning her day around avoiding any responsibility for the wreckage of our marriage. As for family, well, that was complicated. "I'll figure something out," I said, fishing my keys from my pocket. The metal felt cold and foreign in my hands. Martinez was about to respond when his radio crackled. He pressed the button, spoke in low tones, then looked at me with a frown that made my stomach drop. "Mr. Thompson, I need you to come with me to the station." "What for? I'm moving the truck." "There's a federal flag on your record from 1987. I stared at him. 1987? I was 6 years old. What could I have possibly done? Stolen someone's juice box? But Martinez wasn't laughing. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in a sterile government office, facing a woman in an expensive suit who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. "Mr. Thompson, my name is Agent Collins. We need to discuss your immigration status." "My what now?" The words came out as a croak. "I was born in Albany." She slid a folder across the table. "According to our records, you were born in Brussels, Belgium. Your adoption in 1987 was irregular." The room started spinning. I gripped the edge of the table, trying to process what she was saying. That's impossible. My parents died in a car crash when I was 5. The Thompsons adopted me through the state. Agent Collins opened the folder, revealing documents covered in official seals and foreign stamps. "The Thompsons were paid to take you by your wife's family. Your biological mother has been looking for you for 40 years. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of flights, translators, and revelations that shattered everything I thought I knew about my life. The woman who met me at the Brussels airport was small and elegant, with my eyes and my stubborn chin. Through tears and broken English, she told me the story I'd never known. My father had been involved with dangerous people. When the debts came due, they took me as collateral. I was sold to an American family who specialized in private adoptions, the Hartmans, Sarah's grandparents. They'd kept me as insurance, a way to control the narrative if anyone ever came looking. The DNA test confirmed what my heart already knew. I was Henri Dubois, heir to a textile fortune that had been held in trust for 4 decades. My mother pressed a bank statement into my hands with numbers that made my head spin. "You can come home now," she whispered in accented English. "You can have the life they stole from you." But as I sat in her garden, surrounded by the wealth and love I'd been denied, all I could think about was Sarah, about her father's smug face when he'd handed me that eviction notice, about the way she'd looked right through me when I'd begged her to fight for us. "I have some business to finish first," I told my mother. She nodded, understanding flickering in her ancient eyes. "Be careful, Memphis. Revenge is a dish that can burn the one who serves it." I smiled for the first time in months. Good thing I've got experience with fire. I returned to upstate New York with a new bank account, a burner phone, and a heart full of carefully cultivated rage. My first call was to Fitz, my old boxing buddy who ran a gym on the wrong side of town. "Jesus, Danny, he said when I walked into his office. You look like death warmed over. I feel better than I have in years, I replied, and meant it. I need a favor. Fitz leaned back in his chair, studying my face. We'd known each other since high school, had thrown punches together in rings across 3 states. He could read me like a book. This is about Sarah. This is about justice. I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo I'd taken outside the Hartman family estate. Sarah's car was parked next to a silver BMW I didn't recognize. I need to know who owns that car. Fitz whistled low. You sure you want to go down this road? I'm already on it. The question is whether you're coming with me. He was quiet for a long moment, then opened his desk drawer and pulled out a business card. My cousin Riley, she's a private investigator, specializes in cheating spouses and insurance fraud. Tell her I sent you. Riley Martinez, no relation to Officer Martinez as it turned out, was everything I needed in a PI. Tough, cynical, and blessed with the kind of dark humor that made her perfect for the job ahead. Your wife's got expensive taste, she said 3 days later, sliding a manila envelope across the table of the diner where we'd agreed to meet. The BMW belongs to Marcus Webb, her business partner at that boutique marketing firm. I opened the envelope and felt my blood pressure spike. Photos of Sarah and Marcus entering hotels, leaving restaurants, walking hand in hand through parks I used to take her to. The timestamps showed they'd been at it for months, probably since before her family destroyed my business. There's more, Riley continued, stirring sugar into her coffee. Webb's got a condo downtown. Very nice place. Your wife's been there every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 6 weeks. How do you know all this? Riley smiled. Dorman's got a gambling problem. Amazing how helpful people become when you offer to pay their debts. I studied the photos, memorizing every detail. Sarah looked happy in them, happier than she'd been with me in years. The knowledge should have hurt, but instead, it felt like fuel on a fire. What else do you have? Webb's got a Tesla. Loves that car more than his own mother. Parks it in the same spot every day. Has the thing detailed twice a week. She pulled out another photo. He's also got a temper. 3 noise complaints from neighbors. 2 restraining orders from ex-girlfriends. Guy's a real prince. I closed the envelope and pulled out my wallet. How much do I owe you? We're just getting started, Riley said. You want the full package, financial records, phone logs, the works? It's going to cost you. I thought about my mother's bank statement, about the fortune that should have been mine all along. Money's not a problem. That Tuesday, I followed Sarah to Webb's condo, watched her walk into the building like she owned it, like she hadn't destroyed my life to be there. The Tesla sat in its usual spot, gleaming under the afternoon sun. I'd brought tools. Old habits die hard, and a landscaper's truck is basically a mobile arsenal. Hedge trimmers, a weed whacker, bags of fertilizer, and a few items I'd picked up specifically for this occasion. The security camera was easy enough to disable. A little spray paint on the lens, applied during a convenient power outage I'd arranged with a call to the electric company about a gas leak nearby. Amazing how quickly they'll shut down a whole block when public safety's involved. Webb's Tesla was a work of art, I had to admit. Sleek lines, perfect paint job, probably cost more than I'd made in my best year. It would have been a shame to damage something so beautiful. So I didn't damage it. I improved it. The weed whacker made quick work of the windshield, creating a spider web of cracks that would make driving interesting. The hedge trimmers were perfect for the tires. 4 quick cuts, and the car settled onto its rims like a tired animal. The fertilizer went everywhere else, through the broken windshield, stuffed into the air vents, poured liberally over the leather seats. For the finishing touch, I used my old business cards, the ones I'd never gotten to throw away, to spell out a message across the hood. You fertilized my wife, so I fertilized your ride. The whole operation took less than 10 minutes. I was back in my truck and 3 blocks away when I heard the first sirens. By the time Webb and Sarah came down from their love nest, I was sitting in Fitz's gym, working out my frustrations on a heavy bag. Feel better? Fitz asked when I finally stopped punching. Getting there, I said, wiping sweat from my face. But this is just the beginning. My phone buzzed. A text from Riley. Your boy filed a police report. Also, your wife called you 17 times in the past hour. Might want to check your messages. I listened to Sarah's voicemails as I drove home, or what used to be home. Her voice progressed from confused to angry to genuinely frightened as she realized what had happened. Danny, what the hell did you do? The police are asking questions. Marcus is furious. You need to call me back right now. The last message was different, quieter, almost vulnerable. I know you're angry. I know I hurt you. But this isn't you, Danny. This isn't who you are. Please, just call me. We need to talk. I deleted the messages and drove to the motel where I'd been staying since my return. She was right about one thing. This wasn't who I used to be. The old Danny Thompson would have rolled over, would have accepted defeat and slunk away to lick his wounds. But Henri Dubois? He was just getting started. Riley's call came at 6 in the morning, 2 days after the Tesla incident. We've got a problem, she said without preamble. Webb and your father-in-law are planning something. I've got photos of them meeting with a guy who specializes in making problems disappear. I sat up in my motel bed, instantly awake. What kind of problems? The kind that end up in prison or 6 feet under. They're going to frame you for burning down your old business. Make it look like you snapped, went full arsonist. Webb's already got witnesses lined up who will swear they saw you there with gasoline. The old me would have panicked. The new me started planning. When? Tonight. Fire department's been tipped off about suspicious activity at your old place. They'll find evidence. Gas cans with your fingerprints, threatening letters in your handwriting. Very thorough. I was already getting dressed. Can you stop it? Not stop it. But I can make sure their evidence doesn't stick. Meet me at the business in an hour, and bring your tools. The next few hours were a masterclass in counter-surveillance. Riley had connections I hadn't expected. Former cops, security experts, people who knew how to make cameras malfunction at exactly the right moments. While Webb and his hired muscle planted their evidence, we were documenting everything from multiple angles. Got it, Riley whispered as we crouched behind my old equipment shed. Clear shots of both of them planting the gas cans. This is going to look real bad for them when it comes out. But that wasn't enough for me anymore. I wanted more than just to avoid their trap. I wanted to turn it around and use it against them. How long before the fire department shows up? 20 minutes? Maybe 30? Perfect. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Time for some impromptu confessions. What happened next was beautiful in its simplicity. I walked out of the shadows, just as Webb was finishing with the gas cans, my phone recording everything. Evening, Marcus? I said pleasantly. Lovely night for arson. He spun around, his face going white. Thompson, what are you doing here? Oh, watching my business partner destroy evidence of his affair with my wife, while framing me for insurance fraud. The usual Tuesday night entertainment. Webb's hired muscle, a thick-necked guy who looked like he bench-pressed small cars for fun, stepped forward. You need to leave. Now. Actually, I think I'll stay. I kept recording, making sure to get clear shots of their faces. This is still technically my property until the bank sale goes through. I have every right to be here. You're crazy, Webb snarled. Nobody's going to believe whatever paranoid fantasy you're spinning. Really? Because I've got video of you planting evidence, photos of you with my wife, and financial records showing how her family destroyed my business to clear the way for your little romance. I think people will find it very believable. The muscle guy looked at Webb uncertainly. This clearly wasn't part of the plan. What do you want? Webb asked finally. Justice, I said, but I'll settle for watching you squirm. That's when the sirens started. Right on schedule. Sounds like your arson report came through, I continued conversationally. Funny thing about anonymous tips, sometimes they backfire. The fire trucks arrived first, followed by police cars. I walked out to meet them, my phone still recording, while Webb and his friend tried to figure out how to explain their presence at a crime scene they'd called in themselves. "Officers," I said to the responding cops, "I think you'll find this very interesting." The next morning, Webb was in custody on charges of evidence tampering and conspiracy. The story hit the local news by noon. Local businessmen caught planting evidence in insurance fraud scheme. Sarah's name wasn't mentioned, but anyone who knew about their relationship could connect the dots. I was having coffee at Fitz's gym when she finally found me. "You son of a bitch," Sarah said, slamming through the door like an avenging angel. "You destroyed him." "I didn't destroy anything," I replied calmly. "I just turned on the lights." She looked terrible. Makeup smeared, hair disheveled, wearing the same clothes she'd had on the night before. Probably spent the night at the police station, trying to get Webb released. "He could go to prison because of you. He could go to prison because of what he did. There's a difference." Sarah stared at me like she was seeing a stranger.
Intimate text intro, another irreverent dummy.
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
"This isn't you, Danny. You're not vindictive. You don't hurt people." I set down my coffee cup and looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in months. She was still beautiful, still the woman I'd fallen in love with 20 years ago. But there was something else there now, something cold and calculating that I'd been too blind to see before. "You're right," I said. "I don't hurt people, but I'm not Danny Thompson anymore." "What's that supposed to mean?" I pulled out the documents Agent Collins had given me, spread them across the table between us. Birth certificates, DNA results, bank statements. Sarah's face went white as she read. "Your family stole me," I said quietly. "Bought me like a piece of property when I was 6 years old. Did you know?" She was shaking her head, but I could see the truth in her eyes. "You knew. Maybe not all of it, but you knew something. That's why your father was so confident he could destroy me, because in his mind, he owned me." "Danny, please." "Henri," I corrected. "My name is Henri Dubois. Danny Thompson was just a costume I wore for 40 years. I stood up, gathering the documents. "Webb's just the beginning, Sarah. Your father, your whole family, they're going to pay for what they did. And you're going to watch." She grabbed my arm as I walked past. "I love you. Whatever else happened, whatever they did, I love you." I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back at her face. For a moment, I almost believed her, almost let myself fall back into the old pattern of forgiveness and denial. Then I remembered the photos Riley had shown me. The hotel rooms, the restaurants, the way she'd smiled at Webb like she'd never smiled at me. "No," I said, gently removing her hand. "You love the idea of me. The grateful orphan who'd never ask questions, never demand more than you were willing to give. But I'm not that person anymore." I walked away without looking back, leaving her standing in the middle of Fitz's gym like a ghost, haunting a place she'd never belonged. The real work was just beginning. Riley's investigation into the Hartman family finances was a thing of beauty. 3 weeks of digging through public records, following paper trails, and cultivating sources had revealed a web of corruption that went back decades. "Your in-laws are dirty," she announced, spreading files across my motel room bed. "Tax evasion, bribery, fraud. They've got their fingers in every crooked pie in the county." I studied the documents, feeling a familiar surge of satisfaction. How dirty? Dirty enough to bring down the whole family. Your father-in-law has been skimming from his own charity for years. Your mother-in-law has been claiming tax exemptions on properties that don't exist. And Sarah's been helping them launder money through that marketing firm. Sarah knew? Riley nodded grimly. "She's been signing documents, moving money around, creating fake invoices. She's not an innocent victim in this. She's a willing participant." The betrayal should have hurt more than it did. Instead, it felt like the final piece of a puzzle clicking into place. Sarah hadn't just cheated on me, she'd been part of the conspiracy to destroy me from the beginning. What about Webb? He's small time compared to this. The affair was probably just a bonus. The real goal was always to eliminate you as a threat to their operation. I leaned back in my chair, processing the implications. They were afraid I'd find out, or that you'd ask the wrong questions. A landscaping business sees a lot of properties, meets a lot of people. You were in a position to notice things that didn't add up. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We need to talk tonight. Warehouse District, Building 47. Come alone. I showed Riley the message. She frowned. That's not good. Could be a trap. Probably is a trap, I agreed. But I'm going anyway. Then you're not going alone. Building 47 turned out to be an abandoned textile factory, which felt appropriate given my newly discovered heritage. I arrived at the specified time to find Sarah waiting in the shadows, but she wasn't alone. Her father, Richard Hartman, stepped out from behind a pillar, followed by two men I didn't recognize. Hello, Danny, Richard said, his voice carrying the same condescending tone I remembered from 20 years of family dinners. Or should I say Henri? Either works, I replied, keeping my hands visible and my voice steady. Though I prefer the man who's going to destroy you. Richard chuckled. Still the same delusional landscaper. Do you really think a few bank documents and some amateur detective work are going to hurt us? I think they're going to put you in prison. No, Sarah said, stepping forward. They're going to get you killed. The two men moved closer, and I could see the bulges under their jackets. Professional muscle, probably armed. This was definitely a trap. Here's what's going to happen, Richard continued. You're going to sign these papers, transferring your inheritance to a trust fund controlled by us. In exchange, we'll let you walk away from this town and never come back. He held out a folder thick with legal documents. It's a generous offer, considering what you've cost us. What I've cost you? I laughed, genuinely amused. I haven't even started yet. That's when Riley's voice crackled through the concealed microphone I was wearing. Police are 2 minutes out. Keep them talking. You kidnapped me, I continued, raising my voice slightly to make sure the recording equipment picked up everything. Bought me like a piece of property. Destroyed my business when I got too inconvenient. And now you're trying to steal my inheritance. We saved you, Richard snapped. Gave you a life, a family, opportunities you never would have had otherwise. You made me a slave. We made you useful. The admission hung in the air like a confession. Sarah looked horrified, finally understanding the full scope of what her family had done. Daddy, you said he was adopted legally. Shut up, Sarah. Richard's mask was slipping, revealing the cold calculation underneath. He was always going to figure it out eventually. We should have dealt with this problem years ago. One of the muscle guys stepped forward, reaching for his jacket. That's when the warehouse lights blazed to life, and a voice boomed through a megaphone. Police! Everyone on the ground now! The next few minutes were chaos. Richard tried to run and was tackled by two officers. The muscle guys surrendered without a fight, smart enough to know when they were outgunned. Sarah just stood there in shock, watching her world collapse around her. I walked over to where she was standing as the police processed the scene. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't know it would go this far. Yes, you did, I replied. Maybe not all of it, but enough. You chose them over me, Sarah. Every single time. She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. What happens now? Now you face the consequences. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. Riley's been very busy. Tax evasion, fraud, money laundering, conspiracy. You're looking at serious prison time. I can make a deal. Testify against my father, help the prosecutors, maybe. But that's not my problem anymore. I walked away as they loaded Richard into a police car, his face twisted with rage and disbelief. 20 years of marriage, and this was how it ended. Not with love or forgiveness, but with handcuffs and criminal charges. But I wasn't done yet. There was still one more score to settle. The Hartman family's downfall made the front page of every newspaper in the county. Prominent family arrested in corruption scandal. The story had everything: kidnapping, fraud, conspiracy, and enough dirty money to fund a small war. Webb, facing his own charges, had turned state's evidence in exchange for a reduced sentence. His testimony painted a picture of systematic corruption going back decades, with Sarah as a willing participant in laundering money through fake marketing contracts. I watched the coverage from my mother's estate in Brussels, where I'd flown to handle the transfer of my inheritance. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was finally getting the life that should have been mine all along, just in time to use it for revenge. You seem troubled, Monfils, my mother said as we sat in her garden, watching the sunset over the city where I was born. I should feel satisfied, I admitted. They're all facing prison time. Sarah's lost everything, her family, her business, her reputation. It's exactly what I wanted. But? But it doesn't feel like enough. My mother was quiet for a long moment, studying my face with eyes that had seen too much loss. Revenge is like a drug, she said finally. The first taste is sweet, but it leaves you hungry for more. Eventually, it consumes everything else. They stole 40 years of my life, and now you have the rest of your life to live. The question is whether you'll spend it looking backward or forward. I knew she was right, but I couldn't let it go, not yet. There was still one more thing I needed to do. I flew back to New York the next day and drove straight to the courthouse, where Sarah was scheduled to be sentenced. The parking lot was full of reporters and curiosity seekers, all drawn by the spectacle of a prominent family's fall from grace. Sarah looked small and fragile as she walked up the courthouse steps, flanked by lawyers and trying to ignore the cameras. She'd lost weight, and her hair was pulled back in a severe bun that made her look older than her years. I waited until she was almost at the door before I called her name. Sarah. She turned, and for a moment our eyes met across the crowd. 20 years of marriage, of shared dreams and broken promises, all condensed into a single look. I forgive you, I said, loud enough for the reporters to hear. She stopped walking, confusion flickering across her face. I forgive you for the affair, for the lies, for choosing your family over our marriage. I stepped closer, my voice carrying clearly in the sudden silence. But I don't forgive them, and I don't forgive what you became. Danny! My name is Henri Dubois, I said firmly. Danny Thompson died the day you decided I wasn't worth fighting for. Henri Dubois is the man who's going to make sure everyone remembers what the Hartman family really was. I pulled out a thick envelope and handed it to the nearest reporter. Financial records, I announced. Going back 30 years. Every bribe, every fraudulent transaction, every penny they stole from this community. My gift to the people of this town. Sarah's face went white as she realized what I'd done. The additional evidence would ensure that her family's crimes were exposed in excruciating detail, that their name would be synonymous with corruption for generations to come. You don't have to do this, she pleaded. They're already going to prison. Isn't that enough? No, I said simply. It's not. I turned to address the crowd of reporters and onlookers that had gathered. My name is Henri Dubois. 40 years ago, the Hartman family bought me from human traffickers when I was 6 years old. They erased my identity, stole my inheritance, and used me as a pawn in their criminal enterprise. When I became inconvenient, they tried to destroy me. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. But they made one mistake. They underestimated what a man will do when he has nothing left to lose. I looked back at Sarah one last time. Goodbye, Sarah. I hope prison teaches you something your family never could, that actions have consequences. I walked away through the crowd, ignoring the shouted questions from reporters. Behind me, I could hear Sarah crying, but I didn't look back. 3 months later, I was sitting in Riley's office, signing the final paperwork to establish the Dubois Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to finding missing children and supporting victims of human trafficking. The foundation's first major donation would fund a new wing at the local children's hospital, built on the site of my old landscaping business. You sure about this? Riley asked as I signed the last document. It's a lot of money. It's the right thing to do, I replied. Besides, I've got plenty more where that came from. Riley leaned back in her chair, studying me with the same analytical gaze she'd used during our investigation. You look different, she said finally. How so? Lighter. Like you've been carrying something heavy and finally put it down. She was right. The anger that had driven me for months was gone, replaced by something that felt like peace. Or maybe just exhaustion. What will you do now? She asked. I thought about my mother's garden in Brussels, about the textile business I'd inherited, about the life I was finally free to live on my own terms. I'm going home, I said. To Brussels? To wherever I decide home is. I stood up and shook Riley's hand, then walked out into the afternoon sunshine. The town looked different somehow. Smaller, less important than it had seemed when I was trapped here. My phone buzzed with a text from Fitz. Saw the news about the foundation. Proud of you, brother. I smiled and typed back, thanks for everything. Take care of yourself. As I drove toward the airport, I passed the courthouse, where Sarah had been sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. Her father had gotten 15 years, and the rest of the family had received various terms based on their level of involvement. Justice, I supposed. But not the kind that brought anyone back from the dead, or erased 40 years of stolen life. At the airport, I bought a one-way ticket to Brussels and settled into my seat as the plane prepared for takeoff. Through the window, I could see the town growing smaller below me until it was just another collection of lights in the darkness. I closed my eyes and thought about my mother, waiting for me in her garden, about the textile business I would learn to run, the life I would build from scratch at 47 years old, about the future that was finally, truly mine. The old Danny Thompson would have spent the flight thinking about Sarah, about what might have been, about the life they'd destroyed together. But Henri Dubois was looking forward, not back. As the plane climbed into the night sky, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Not for revenge or justice or even forgiveness. Just hope. And that, I realized, was the best revenge of all.